which may be crazy to some. But
Well, I think this conversation is gonna be focused on two perspectives, right? One as a user, one as a purchaser, right? Who many purchasers don't happen to be users. So I'm excited to talk to our guests tonight to see their experiences and their intake.
likewise, likewise. So let's go ahead and get to it. We're going to be joined by Warren Nist and Jake McHugh. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, you know what to do. Place your questions in the chat box. If you don't want someone to know you're asking the question, or you're just at a place where you can't really type it into the chat box, you can feel free to text it to us at 214-717-5921. We'll share that information and we'll get a response to you. If it comes in a little later, we will still get a response to you, although it may not be within this clip of the episode. So without further ado, let's get ready. Welcome, Jake McHugh and Warren Nist. Thank you all for joining us on Knowledge or Nonsense. Knowledge or Nonsense is a platform, a live platform. So this is live, where we vet, the processes, the patterns, even the perspectives of things that we do within sterile processing. Is it knowledge or is it nonsense? Where did it come from? Are we doing it because we've always done it? Do those methods still fit today? And so today we're going to talk about instrument tracking systems. If you guys have any questions, please let us know. Warren is a repeat guest. Warren always is giving away nuggets for free. He's so helpful. And so I'm excited. This is Jake's first time with us. And I know Jake has spent some time with podcasts. You were recently on a podcast about a month and a half ago?
Yes, with Beyond Clean, I think.
Yes, with Beyond Clean, yes.
Okay.
And so, Beyond Clean brings a lot of information as well. They have a heart for sterile processing. So kudos to Beyond Clean. So I'll hush now and say instrument tracking systems. Lelaine, take it away.
Look, this is going to be a fun conversation. Don't know if it's a real quote, but we're going to start with this quote. To track or not to track? Jake, you're up. What should we have instrument tracking systems in our facilities or not?
Absolutely, you should have instrument tracking systems in your facilities. They are so helpful, better than the old pen and paper systems. If you lose any of that documentation, where are you going to find it? Where it couldn't all be in a database, ready to look it up at a snap of the finger.
Warren, to track or not to track?
Absolutely to track. No question about it. The flexibility, the options that it gives you as a manager, there's certainly no reason not to track.
So I know for some facilities, instrument tracking is an expensive endeavor, right? Some folks simply can't afford it, or others underrepresent its usefulness. How useful could an instrument tracking system be as it relates to employee retention and customer satisfaction?
So employee retention, you can implement so much education through these tracking systems. Not only could you have pictures behind each instrument tray showing you how to take it apart, you can have instrument pictures on each instrument of the count sheet. So I know employee retention can be very difficult with education. Customer satisfaction, that just doubles over. If you have step-by-step walkthroughs on how to clean, inspect, and what these instruments are, you're going to have cleaner trays, you're going to have safer patients.
Hey,
I
Jake,
agree.
If this were a tracking system commercial, sir, you just sold a gazillion of them. Warren, what were you saying?
I was going to say, to add to that, it's proficiency, right? You can track the proficiency of your employees. And the best part about that is then you know who your stars are. And then you utilize those stars to help your other staff in the department, which in the end reduces errors. So right back, to what's been said already, it's going to increase the quality of your product.
I wanted to ask a question for managers out there. I really want to assume that a manager has all of the answers, but for managers out there, if they can track the productivity, is there a way that they can track it like accurately based on specialty? A lot of people know how to grab the easy trace, so is there a
Yes,
way that they can do that as well with the tracking systems?
it actually, you can, with certain systems, I'll say with this, with certain systems, because not all systems work the same. But in the background database that supports the tracking systems, it allows for you to design productivity metrics for individual items, regardless of specialty. So that in itself allows you to define the outputs that you require, and then be able to track it back to individuals, as well as use the quality metrics. Most systems have a quality management system built into it, so you can track those errors as well, and what kind of errors you're having, because it may be just a particular instrument in a set, for example. And if you're tracking that, then you only need to fix one thing. You don't need to fix all 100 instruments or whatever's in that set.
Excellent. I like that.
And it definitely helps if the manager has a little bit of finesse with Excel, so they can not only take the information that the tracking systems might have readily available, sometimes you got to tweak it a little bit to see what else you can make from it, what you can pull from the data.
You know what I find interesting, team, is when I was a technician, right? We didn't have a lot of options for tracking systems. In fact, when I was hired by Chance, you had to know your instrumentation, right? I remember part of the orientation came to an office. They took 3 trays, dumped them in a box. Lawayne, go. Here's the timer. And you had to assemble these trays. Now with instrument tracking system, how user-friendly could an instrument tracking system be as it relates to a new employee orientation?
It's absolutely user friendly. I mean, it's not perfect, so I don't want anybody to misunderstand, because not all instrument manufacturers provide those pictures that we utilize on the system. So sometimes you may have a Cardinal product, for example, but you're in your tray, you have an Astrolab product. It just depends on what instruments you have. I mean, come on, most of our sets have, I don't know, I've lost count, 10, 12, 20 different manufacturers, right? So you're not always going to have the exact picture, the exact nomenclature. And like I said, there are certain companies that will not provide that information, but it's still the majority of the instruments. I would say I'm going to throw it out on a limb and say 75% of it is available, if not more. That will certainly bring those staff people up to speed faster.
Yeah.
And I got to second that, because I started out with a place had no tracking systems. You had to learn what trays, and just looking at them, you get halfway through the tray and you realize your major general was actually a major plastics, and then you'd have to start from scratch again. But all systems pretty much track, but it's the system part that you build. So it's only as good as what your hospital is doing, making sure that you're scanning at all the locations, making sure that that information inside the count sheets is definable.
Absolutely.
Sharon, I think you're on mute.
So to be clear, Jake actually just said a lot, because often we want the shiny new object, or we have the budget and it gets approved. But he said it's the system that you build. So even if the system is designed to work, there are things we have to do on the front end, which will have a definite effect. And I know, like I said, I am not instrument tracking system subject matter expert at all. I know the names of them. I know the ones that are used most frequently, but I'm not a subject matter expert. In my experience, I have seen where facilities take the dive, they invest into this instrument tracking system. Everyone is excited, and something as simple as inventory keeps getting pushed off. And then when they implemented, and they're like, it should run, and they're waiting for all the bells, whistles, and everything to be just right, and it's not just right because what you just said, Jake, that front end work didn't didn't take place,
Mhm.
and that can cost them like thousands and thousands of dollars, man hours, FTE. Tell me about it, Warren. I see right there. I saw it hit you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been through a few go lives, and I can tell you, it can absolutely ruin the system if it's not properly managed before you go live and after you go live. It literally can become junk in and junk out. And once you're at that point, cleanup is absolutely necessary. And if you don't do it, you lose the quality of the management system immediately.
Um, touche. You know, so I almost akin this, Jake and Warren and Sharon. It's like when you buy a car, right? If you call the car service and press one for sales, one ring, sales is picking up. Press two for service, no one picks up on service. Press two for service, no one picks up on service, right? So not all tracking systems and are created equal at all. Some have amazing customer service, but there's some, you know who you are, after the purchase, the implementation phase goes south, right? And you can't always blame the company. The customer also has some stake in that story.
Right.
But I've seen time and time again, we purchase this tracking system. It has all the bells and whistles, but for some reason, we got at go. Now we can't get past go. Have you been there, Jake?
A little bit. So you better hope that your tracking system has a great on hold song, because sometimes you got to wait through that. Um, but for implementing tracking systems, one of the biggest lessons I've learned is map out your current process first and then make a plan to roll out and grow. I've seen and talked to a lot of people that it's like, okay, we're getting this tracking system. We're going to go from 1 to 100. And because they're not used to the system and they're not used to these new processes they're trying to take on, they trip right out the door. And they're fumbling through everything. If you map out what you're already doing with a plan to roll out to do everything you want to do, that's where I've seen a lot of people succeed. You know, slow and steady wins the race.
I would agree.
Go ahead.
Well, I was
Once
gonna say,
you
I
hit
would
that
agree.
go button, it's on. There's no
Hell yeah.
stopping.
Yeah.
It is, and it depends on, again, are you in a standalone system, right, Jake, or are you interfacing with like an Epic system? Because that's where the breakdowns really start to happen. When you start interfacing and data needs to be pulled back and forth, bi-directional data, and if it's not matching and it's not connected properly, you have bad information. But back to what Luane was saying, Luane, I kind of look at it this way: it's buying the brand new car but never changing the oil, and then the engine breaks down. That's the same thing as not managing your software.
Well said. Well said. You know, Sharon, go ahead, jump in there.
Well, I just wanted to ask before we go to commercial break. When we come back, we're gonna deal with the question that's on, which is a continuation of what we're talking about. I wanted to ask, what are things that C-suite level or systems would look at before purchasing an instrument tracking system? And what are some of the invisible things that need to be considered for a successful rollout of a tracking system? Should I hit a commercial first? And maybe
Sure.
let us think on that?
Sure thing.
What does C-suite need to look at is in quantifiable hard costs, and what are some of the intangibles, invisible things that have to be a part of a successful rollout? Those are our questions. And when we come back from this commercial break, Warren Nist and Jake McHugh are going to tell us about it. They're going to answer our questions.
Those in the know SIPS Consults. SIPS Consults is hiring. Confident, competent, and consistent. Starting as a consultant and a volunteer, SIPS has grown into a dynamic group of stellar sterile processing professionals, offering excellent benefits, 401k, and consultant in training program. We are hiring certified technicians, leads, supervisors, interim managers, educators, coordinators. Apply at recruiting@sipsconsults.com or dial 1-866-615-7977.
And we're back. And so the first part, what is something? Okay, go ahead, Jake. You're ready. Tell us about it.
So I know what the C-suites that I've talked to, what they're looking for usually is the ability to pull out data and cost. And that's pretty much what they're looking for. If they can't, what can they get from it? Because they're not scanning trays, they're not building sterilizer loads. So what can they pull out of it? And then what is it gonna, what is it gonna cost them in the long run, in the short run?
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
How about you, Warren?
Well, I agree with that because the cost is a six-figure cost in most cases. It can be upwards between $150,000 and $200,000 even for a good instrument tracking system. So cost is always apparent. But how do we make our money back, right? And there's a lot of different ways you can use instrument tracking systems. One, when we look at quality, right? If we increase our quality, then we have the possibility of reducing cost in the operating room. We might get maybe one more OR case in, each day on average if we can become more efficient. So you've got to drive that scenario that we can create value with the system.
Indeed. There are so many return on investments for the right tracking system, and quality, to your point, is on top of the list, right? If you can capture what's going in and what's coming out and be able to quantify errors and wins, because it's not just errors you want to quantify. You want to quantify those wins as well. We know in SPD, we're always told we're so distracted, right? The right tracking system can also capture those distraction points. When the phone rings, when the OR calls down, the doorbell rings. So the right technology mixed with the right talent, I think that's a winning circumstance. I think that's really winning circumstance.
You can. I've actually been able to utilize systems to actually track error points at times of days where they were specific to certain times of days. So when you start looking at that, you go, okay, well, what is happening at this time of day? One of them for me happened to be change of shift. Our error rate went up during change of shift. So we had to look at change of shift and say, what was causing that issue? So this is where these are these nuggets that you said, Sharon, that you can pull out of the systems though. If you utilize it, unfortunately, most people underutilize their systems and use them as count sheet programs.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
And there's so much more than a count sheet program. But even when Jake was speaking earlier, that means that you have to put in the time. And Warren, you already know this. Like, you literally have to put in the time. It's not, it may seem like plug and play, but it's not plug and play. And that's why I was coming with part two of the question. What are some of the invisible or the things that we may not think about as a hard cost that need to be in place to ensure a successful rollout? Like staff engagement, education, like people get used to doing a certain thing a certain way. And even if something is easier, sometimes I've always done it, So what are some of what are some things that people don't readily think of that need to be in place? Jake?
I would probably say if you can have the tracking system you're going to be implementing, like a demo version, having people sit down before you've gone live and kind of like teach one, do one. So go through how you're going to be in decontam, how you're going to assemble a tray, do a sterilizer load, and scan it to storage. And if you can show them each one of those main parts and then have them, play it back for you, that like education's always going to be how you get everybody on board and track that who's doing the education and who's made it through.
Big time. That's a great point. Prior to or before tracking system implementation, I recommend you have multidisciplinary teams involved. Don't leave it only to SPD. I never recommend you leave it only to SPD. Call your IT folks. Let them be involved all the way through. Infection control in the operating room. In fact, because imagine in best case scenario, any stakeholder or customer that's going to be impacted by this grand purchase should have a seat at the table. Not all the way, maybe, but should have a seat at the table to just share their input. Warren, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree because expandability, that's what you're looking for, right? You just don't want to track items in sterile processing. You want to track them full circle. And that could include your operating room, but that can include your other areas of the hospital as well. Items that are going out to these ancillary areas and coming back. One of the things that everybody who's worked in sterile process has received a phone call and said, "You lost my X, Y, and Z," right? When you can track it out to your ancillary areas, you can say, well, no, we sent it out to you on this date. This person picked it up, what have you. Again, it goes back to the credibility of the department, and you can start to snip these issues in the bud. And you can gain traction with your customers when you can actually provide hard data for them.
Oh, it goes a long way. You come to your monthly or bi-weekly or weekly OR committee meeting or surgical suite meeting or whatever meeting where you have to sit in front of your customers, many decision makers, and they need answers. They want to know what happened on Tuesday to cause that case delay. How come we're ordering $30,000 worth of scissors when we just purchased that last month? That data, Warren, that you can extract from the right tracking system is priceless. It's priceless.
Yeah, again, and that's one of the things, Warren, when you were speaking earlier, that's a way that they can recoup the ROI right there, just on repair cost, on because now you know where things really are on replacement costs as far as inventory, because
Right.
now no, we really do have it, and it could cut down on a lot of man hours that are spent looking for something because we know where the location is, which again points to doing the work on the front end with inventory. Jake, is there something what do you?
One of the things I was really thinking about when you were going back a little bit to the C-suite question was anything that your hospital is like, we need this tracking system to do this, or if the company is promising you these big things, sit down with them and make them prove to you that the system can do what they're telling you, and the system can do really what you want it to. Because I've seen a couple of situations where the tracking system companies trying to make a sell, and they'll promise everything will be solved, and then when they roll in, it's like, oh well, we're really been working on that, so we're trying to get it out this next year. It's like, and then that next year turns into 2 years. So make them show you that it can be done.
Well, Jake, in your experience, how many hospitals in Warren? Open question. How many hospitals have you worked in? They have a tracking system, and one of the selling points for the tracking system was it's bi-directional feed. It can speak to the OR scheduling board. It's bi-directional feed. Have you seen this in action, or is it just a myth?
I have seen it in action.
I've only seen the one-way direction. I have not seen the bi-directional yet. But I believe it exists.
It does exist. Absolutely.
Wow, wow, that's interesting, Warren, because that's always I get excited when the OR. We talk about communication between SPD and the OR, and here's a system that can speak both languages.
But it comes to that implementation. It has to be implemented properly to do so. So that is key in your go live. There's so much groundwork that has to be laid, to make sure everything does speak to each other and speak properly. And it's kind of interesting because you can look at, and I'll use Epic again as OR manager systems that a lot of the ORs use. OR teams don't use our language, right? And then we have the nomenclature, and you've got to connect the two so that one knows what the other one is, even though the names might be somewhat different. So it's a little tricky in the beginning.
It is. It absolutely is.
And I would make sure that you know the pathway and communication to the team, whether it be Epic or Cerner or whoever it is, because even if you roll out perfectly, there's always going to need to be changes. There's always going to need to be adjustments made. You need to know who to talk to.
Oh yeah.
Okay, because I was definitely about to ask, can you expound more on what you mean when you're saying know the pathway? Does that mean knowing the right point of contacts for the various parts of your system?
Well, at least I was mainly talking about the medical record company, be it Epic or Cerner, because if you have to change something or add something to your tracking system and it doesn't go through, or maybe there's something wrong with that electronic medical record, you need to know who to talk to make that fix.
Hmm.
Wow.
So if for hospitals that are in the survey window, they're about to be surveyed by DNV, by Joint Commission, by CMS, how useful can a tracking system be to support a sterile processing facility during a survey?
Well, I'll go first. And what I will say this is it is the fastest way of discerning whether your records are complete, right? You know, pulling down that information, as Jake said earlier, you do have to be somewhat knowledgeable in computer systems. Excel is primarily the format, but as compared to going through papers and papers and papers and papers, right? Looking at your quality assurance, making sure everything is, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. An instrument tracking system is so much faster. And it's so much faster because you can use it daily to complete this process in minutes instead of hours. So you can be Joint Commission, DNL, V, whoever's surveying you, state of who, and you'll be ready. You'll know. And the nice thing is, you're ready, right? So it's invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Jake.
I was going to say, just imagine the Joint Commission surveyor walking in and asking to see a sterilizer load from 3 months ago. Now you got to pull out the books, you got to flip through the pages. Maybe you already shipped it off to the warehouse for storage. Now you got to recall it, as opposed to a tracking system where you can click, click, click. You've brought it up on the screen, everything's there. And, before the Joint Commission comes in, there's probably a few reports you can run to make sure that you're not missing any dotted I's or crossed T's when you're talking about your load documentation. And now you have peace of mind.
Yeah. With these, it's interesting, right? I've read a few articles about tracking systems that they have AI. They have that advanced technology where they can adapt to the user, and that adaptation makes the product that much more qualitative. Have you heard or read or seen any tracking systems with this advanced technology yet?
I haven't, not to that capability, but there are things that you can have in the background. For example, there are dashboards, right? You can devise the systems to send you certain reports, customizable reports that you want to see on a daily basis, and have that information come right to you. You can look at it live as well on your dashboard. So if you have, a supervisor for a particular shift, they're looking at that information, whatever information you want them to look at, whether it's productivity, how many items are in decontam right now, how many items are awaiting sterilization, whatever that might be. Again, looking at all that documentation for your sterilizers, are our biologicals complete, et cetera, et cetera. And it's live, or have it sent to you in a report.
All right. Hey, we're going to take a quick commercial break, guys. We are talking today with Warren Nist and Jake McHugh, and we're talking about instrument tracking systems. The entire first half of the show, we've talked about what your executive team may need to know, what C-suite may need to know to help move them forward, the questions they may have toward purchasing an instrument tracking system, also some of the intangibles, things that may not be a hard cost, but it still needs to happen for it to be a successful rollout. If you have any questions, please put your questions in the chat box or send them to me at 214-717-5921. Warren and Jake, thank you guys so much. As we take this commercial break, when we come back, we're going to continue talking about tracking systems. We may actually discuss whether there is a quote unquote Rolls Royce or whatever your vehicle of choice is of tracking systems. We'll try not to say whether there is a VW of tracking systems or maybe a Pinto or a Gremlin, but we'll just look at some of the things that are out there and hopefully we'll be able to bring even more information to all people as it relates to tracking systems. We'll be right back. Yes, you guys are watching the Knowledge and Nonsense, and that is CSS Stories. It is a show on the Knowledge and Nonsense Network with Sarah B. Cruz. So definitely join her tomorrow. She'll be speaking with Allison Sonstally, and we'll be learning a little bit more about Allison. So with the tracking system.
Wait, Shannon, hold on one moment, because you said Pinto. I'm trying to envision what a Pinto. Do any of you actually know what a Pinto looks like? Be honest.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I rode in a Gremlin in high school. Pintos were still on the road when I was in high school. Are you kidding?
Oh,
Jay,
myself.
You know what a Pinto
I think that's
is?
just before my time. It's just before. I know of them, but I can't picture one in my mind.
Okay, as long it's not just me. Go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah, it was a car decades ago. I'll just put it like that, decades ago. And it's probably, even though it may be some classic one somewhere here or there, it's a little antiquated for what we expect from vehicles today.
Gotcha.
So would it behoove, like, would it be in the best interest of a manager or a facility maybe to have a dedicated person, even though everyone can scan in instruments, but a dedicated person for the tracking system? Because it sounds like it's spreadsheets involved, inventory. You guys mentioned what'd you say, unidirectional versus one directional. It has to integrate with Epic or something that needs to know the language of both the OR and SPD, not the wiggle-majigget and things like that. So what do you think about having a dedicated person for your tracking system? Is that even reasonable to ask? Would it help a department?
I would sure hope so, because that's my job. So I'm completely believe that you should have a tracking system coordinator for your hospital. Especially the larger your facility is, the more important that person is, because if you have to roll out to new locations, that person can put out the scan points. They can train whoever needs to be trained on how to use it. If there are updates and changes to the process, they can manage those emails and get the information out to who needs to know. They can help with putting in new trays, taking those pictures, or getting other people involved to help them with that. So it's really good to have somebody like that.
I absolutely agree. I've actually written a couple job descriptions for just this purpose. The other plus to it, for Jake's position, is this is a support person for your management team. If you don't have people who are really good with Excel, for an example, or the data, pulling that data out of the system, this is somebody who can send those reports, refine that information, and have those managers get that information in a timely fashion and be able to discern what they're looking at very quickly versus digging it out themselves. So having somebody who's extremely proficient, and as he said, with the updates, there's constant change in the system, and if you have too many hands in the pot, I can tell you right now, it can go south really fast.
I think that's a nugget, gentlemen and gentle lady. Look, a new job description, right? Tracking system coordinator. We hear many a day our colleagues in SPD think they hit a ceiling. Where am I gonna go? Lead worker, okay, educator, manager, supervisor, yada yada yada. How about tracking system coordinator, right? So Google JD. Warren said he's wrote a couple, so he may be your go-to. But look at that, tracking system coordinator.
Yeah, definitely reach out to Warren. Evolve Store Processing. I wanted to say plethora, but I'm going to say it. He has a plethora of information, forms. He's been doing this a while, and he understands. He really has a innate insight in all things store processing. So he'll be able to help you out there. Managers, go ahead, Loane. You had another question.
Look, we're not gonna let that question go before the break. We said we were gonna look at if tracking systems were comparable to some of these automobiles, and we mentioned Pinto. Someone may have seen Gremlin or whatever. without mentioning the name, and it's hard because some tracking system names jump right out at you, right? In fact, if you Google tracking systems, 5 are gonna come right up off the back. You Google sterile processing tracking, instrument tracking is gonna come right up. But let's talk about some differences.
Some of the attributes and some of the traits.
What would a really robust tracking system have versus one that's just basic? Give me one apiece.
The data analytics is what it can send to you automatically. It's going to be the number one thing I think that'll separate them all out.
Okay.
And along with that, it's the flexibility of that data, right, Jake? It's what can you do with that data? There's certain companies that have defined pathways where you really can't tweak that information that you want to get out of it. But it actually comes back to I don't want to say customer service, but it's customer service like. It's how well they work with you. I've worked with companies in the past where we actually implemented new processes within their system, working with them, which then the best thing is this is a village, because if you have that same tracking system that I have, now you get that update, you get that new report or new process that we created with them. And I've been able to do that time and time again. And then there's other companies, as Jake had mentioned earlier, well, they might not do that update for a year or 2 years or never. So there's just so many nuances to working with different companies.
Yeah, so totally agree. You know what's always a feature that I really appreciate is when tracking systems can help you manage your repair costs. I absolutely love that feature, and we always teach the motto, repair should be based on utilization. Repair should be based on utilization. Instead of, I've seen some hospitals that they would have a tracking system and a repair guy or girl or person would come in and they would randomly select trays based on their intuition, and not anything truly measurable, based on intuition. Jake, can you relate?
Oh yeah, I've been there where it's like, well, I haven't done ortho in a while. I should probably get that. And we went from that to date usage, and I've gone from date usage to utilization, and I will never go back from utilization. That is the key to instrument repair.
Yeah. But I can say this too. I've been in hospitals where with the utilization process was improperly set as well. So again, you have to work with your vendors. You have to have that innate ability to know or learn what you need to have in your system to make it function properly.
Oh yeah, and your repair service technician should be able to work with you to say, these retractor sets, they're doing very well. We can probably raise those usages up a little bit, but your microplastic trays, they're getting really dinged up every time I see them. I know we got them at a low usage, but I think we need to take it down another 2 clicks.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, Warren.
I was going to say, I can share with you that in a hospital that I worked in, we had a physician who was a cardiac physician and had a complaint on a particular Castro Viejo needle holder. We were able to actually trace it to the point where if he used it more than 25 times, we were going to receive a complaint. So that item was tracked. Every 25th use, it got pulled out, it got serviced, and that eliminated the problem. But it took some time, and it took working with the instrument company. Unfortunately, that instrument company or instrument repair company no longer exists. It was bought out. But it was something that we were able to utilize the tracking system and working with our vendor to solve the problem that the physician was having.
That's a great tracking system story. Whatever tracking system that was, they should hire you to write a white paper on just that scenario. Because I'm sold. If you track something down to the 25th use and then made the determination is at that point that all hell breaks loose, I'm sold. I want that tracking system. By the way, what was the name of that tracking system? Don't say it.
That tracking system does still exist. Just the instrument company, repair company doesn't.
Gotcha.
So how, like, for a manager who may be listening now and he's trying to get his team, for this is for the manager, not the executives, but for say mid-level management, they're trying to get their team to really get on board with all that the tracking systems can do. How would you, like, what's something you might share with him? Like, Warren, if you were mentoring a manager, I know you have that, so it's on you, Warren, it's coming. If you're mentoring a manager and you're mentoring somebody in leadership who may not know anything about case building, not building a trade, but case building for capital purchases, how does this manager use a instrument tracking system to support some of his budgetary needs, to support some of the needs he has within the department?
Well, it depends on where you're starting, with the problem. For example, if you're talking about case building, right? We're looking at, I don't know if you mean by case building, you're talking about case cart building.
No, I'm saying like showing your executive team, listen, this is
Okay.
what we need, and this is why we need it, and some of that data that we're having, because the data does nothing if you don't know what to do with it.
That is very true. And obviously, if you're working with a suite team, you understand that you have about maybe a 5-minute window of time, right? You're very limited amount. So that is very important. Now, but if you don't have the system, though, how do you support that particular case build, as you say? That's where you're going to obviously have to work with the instrument tracking system. I would say you do your research, figure out who you want to purchase, and then go from there and have them help you build that story. They will have a presentation, most guaranteed.
That's good. They do. That's good. That's good.
Mhm. Yeah. Hey, there's a great article. I just posted it. It says surgical instrument tracking systems market will be worth close to 400 million by 2028, right? But this article was written by the Grand Research Group. So if you dial into the article, you can see certain trends separated by states. Do you think, depending on the region of the country, is going to determine if they have a tracking system or not, or is it more based on budgetary command of those facilities?
I'm going to say, yeah.
Go ahead,
Go
Warren.
ahead. I'm sorry. That's right. Go
No,
ahead.
you go.
I was going to say, yeah. When you're looking at where I am at now in the Midwest, right? Your community-based hospitals are going out of business at a record pace right now. Budgetary constraints are huge. Obviously, COVID has done a number on hospitals, healthcare. Dollars, that's the end result, unfortunately. That probably is going to be your greatest challenge. But I think, Jake, you mentioned earlier too, ramping up. How do you piecemeal it together? Because you can piecemeal some of these systems together. You just have to start with maybe a module, and maybe that's how you sell it till you get to where you need to be. And that may be a 5-year plan. So it depends on how you put it together. You may be able to buy all of it at one time or not. But look for those key selling points, take that to the C-suite, have that company help you out, and start somewhere.
Okay. Jay?
And I would even say in your closer hospital groups, maybe there's a hospital next door that has a tracking system, and you can go visit them and see how it's working out for them, see the interface. Because I know a lot of places where it's like techs move around and oh, this place has got a tracking system, don't go there because it's no good. So word of mouth can be a lot, and use your neighbors to see what they're doing.
Absolutely.
I love that. Use your neighbors. Use your neighbors. We need that on a t-shirt. Use your neighbors. Not even just for tracking systems, but I've said this before, if there's one thing, no one wanted to go through COVID, but if there's one thing on this side of the pandemic, it has made things smaller, even as it's made them bigger. And there are resources and round tables that you have access to that may not be in your zip code now, because of this, online and different things that you're getting these knowledge and nonsense. You're getting access to people who are your neighbors. We're somebody's online neighbor right now.
This is true. What's interesting about since we're in this neighborhood, I've also experienced working in hospital systems right? So same system, same umbrella, and they have different tracking systems. That's
Yeah.
always mind-boggling to me. And the sister facility can be right across the street, literally, and they have two different systems, two different networks. Have you experienced that, Warren?
I have, but I will also share. I was working with a company again. Unfortunately, this company was purchased as well, but they were in the UK, and they actually shared their data across the UK. So you were an anonymous healthcare system, but you were able to see everybody's data.
Mm,
Just it was innocuous, which again gave you a better platform, a better benchmark for where you were at compared to other hospitals that were using their same software. You're not seeing that in the United States. They are still present in the UK. They're just not present in the United States.
wow, interesting, interesting.
You think
So
that
Warren, that was you mentioned two companies now that you work with that were acquired or purchased.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be a betting man, but I bet you know who's going to be purchased by who next year. Um,
Ooh.
so interesting. RFID and tracking systems. Is this a real path forward? Have you seen or heard or read about the technology where RFID is going to be integrated into our communities and cell processing communities?
Yeah.
Actually been working on that for 10 years. I've worked with instrument tracking companies on RFID. Most of what I've actually worked with are RFID companies that can be interfaced with instrument tracking systems.
Mm,
The,
okay.
it's getting better from a cost perspective, but I can tell you it's expensive to start off with, or was it expensive to start from last time I worked with it. My purchase was going to be about $1 million from the RFID component. And that was from marking the instruments to purchasing the equipment, what have you. But at that particular time in that particular hospital, I was also spending $250,000 on instrument replacements each year. So when you looked at the system itself, that is almost a whole nother subject in itself. But to make it short, is it potentially could have paid for itself in 5 or 6 years.
Mm, okay.
And I've seen it in working with scopes. So Olympus does put RFIDs in their higher number GI scopes and bronch scopes, and that can interface with some of the automated scope reprocessors.
Right.
There's a tracking system or two out there that has an RFID reader that you can buy for it.
Interesting. With technology getting smaller and faster, will we ever get to the point where tracking systems will be in the palm of your hand? Is that coming? Is that real?
I say
They already are.
I was gonna say cell phone. They
Yeah.
are born.
Yes, they already are. There
Mhm.
are multiple systems that they're slightly bigger than your phone, but have systems that you can, for example, if you're building a case cart, you can scan with a device that's about the same size as your cell phone.
And I've seen tracking systems that actually can have apps that go on your phone. So you use your camera and you can do a few things. You can't do everything that your full size computer tracking system can do, but you can scan trays to locations. You can look up trays where they are, and it's really nice.
Well, let me take you back to the RFID real quick, Loing. I mean, one of the things that I was looking at from a value standpoint was with these RFID systems, for example, in an operating suite, they open up all the trays. They use a certain amount of instruments. We know right now most white papers are telling us somewhere less than 20% of the instrumentation. But they had the capabilities of actually sweeping the instruments in less than 20 seconds. You will know what instruments were used, what instruments weren't used, and you can track that for a period of time. That's when you start to pare down your trays. That's where you start to get cost savings, reduces the amount of time for putting up a tray as you reduce the number of instruments in the tray, reduces weight, reduces cost for repair.
Wow.
RFID for me is where everybody should be heading.
And you
Wow.
can even use it. I'm assuming in the right way. You could do your instrument counts. So
Yes,
you set up your OR table. You do your initial scan. You make sure everything's
right.
identified, At the end of the case, you do your second scan. If you have an instrument missing, you better find it. And hopefully it's
Well,
just in the trash can.
the other part of it is you can actually begin to track individual instruments to your patient. Now you know the exact instrument that was used on your patient, and if you have a cross contamination, you can track that all the way back.
That's huge. That's huge. You know, for all of our listeners who work for the FDA, they're applauding right now, because that's really huge. Again, years ago, that was just only a concept, right? It was wishful thinking. Now the technology is catching up to the science, and this is going to be really interesting.
And all of that really just goes back into, yes, you can track your instrument all the way to the patient that was used on, but unless the system can get you out that data in a usable manner,
Right.
it doesn't do you any good.
Wow. You
Yeah,
just
yeah.
have you just have a shiny new object, or you have all this information and it's not serving you at all.
You get a Mercedes with no keys.
Wow.
Yeah,
Right,
nice.
Right.
right.
That's nice. That made it plain.
Yeah. We there are so many surgical tracking system think tanks out there. And I urge folks in our community, sterile processing, get involved. They need your input. They need testers, they need crashers, they need you to get involved. And you can start. You want a tracking system and you have specific needs, then you reach out and connect with some of these manufacturers. Many will
I
welcome.
wanted
But
I wanted to ask, so when the tracking system first came, Warren, this may be you, since Jake didn't kind of know what the Gremlin was and the Pinto, I'm just with love, Jake. And you too, Dwayne. I see some people who are listening. You guys can weigh in as well in the comments. At the introduction of the tracking system, when it first was introduced to sterile processing, was it simply to have an inventory? Was it simply to keep a record so that instruments aren't lost or walking away from facilities? When it was first introduced or initially, what was the purpose? I mean, because it says tracking system, and I'm sure it's doing a whole lot more now than it did when it first came. So
Right.
you,
So I can tell you, and I may not be exact on this, but I think, and again, I won't mention the name. One of the oldest instrument tracking systems started around 1995, so they've been around for a while. So tracking certainly is important. From my knowledge, is most of them that I've worked with kind of started off as count sheet programs. Again, trying to help with pictures, trying to help with building sets.
okay.
And I'll take you back to the pinup, because when I started in sterile processing, we didn't even have count sheets. We had index cards. You worked off of index cards to build sets. So, it's come an awful
Oh my
long
gosh,
way.
it's like a rotary phone. It's
Yeah,
like
I
Downy
know
with a
those
rotary
too.
phone.
Yes, I've had one of those in my lifetime.
I have too, but I'm just saying, when you put it in perspective like
Yeah.
that would be like me trying to tell my nephew, like, he'd be like, why is that phone doing that? Why do we have to go in a circle? But yeah, I apologize. Go ahead. You were saying index cards.
Well, I was just gonna say, again, for my particular experience, we didn't have computers in sterile processing. Microsoft Word wasn't invented yet, so um, that it's come a long way.
yeah. And it's so interesting. There's clearly some bigger names in the tracking system space, but there's some new names out there, and you see some of the commercials on LinkedIn that I'm really excited about. Really excited about the technology, the different uses. There's a tracking system that I've seen now that truly can be utilized for every area in the hospital, but it's being sold as just a surgical instrument tracking system, but it's so robust with the reporting tools, it can be used in every single area of the hospital. So I think this is the area I miss most about going to our some of the bigger conferences. Asian was canceled to see the new
Right.
technology. It's like being a kid in a candy shop to see what's out there.
Well, there's some new ones on the market that most people don't even know about as well, that are really small at this particular point in time. But again, they're looking at what problems we are having with the current systems that are marketed. I think the unfortunate part about it is in our industry is the buyout feature, right? Where everything's being consolidated and we're losing, I think, good products that were in development that just never go anywhere.
Yeah, well, look, that's a mechanism utilized by some corporations, right? If
Yes.
you have a product that may give me competition, I can buy you and shelf it,
Yep.
right? And it's only a
Then
theory.
please use it. If you find it a threat, there's a reason.
Agreed.
You know,
Implement it in your tracking system.
that actually is
Agreed.
that's a viable business model. But it also may not be one that lasts forever. Record companies used to do that with various artists. They sign you and then they don't produce your album, but they've signed you, so now you can't go anywhere else. Just to, and so I mean, it's a viable business model. But yeah, I hear what Jake is saying too. Please use it. So hey, it's almost time for us to get out of here. I definitely want to give Jake, I want to give you an opportunity to just share. First, share where people can find you. Your bio simply says the most important trade that you work on is the one that's right in front of you. And so I know that you have a heart. I see you on Thursday nights as part of sterile processing, what you don't know on Clubhouse. Tell us a little about you, and is there anything you'd like to share about tracking systems, period?
I mean, yeah, you can follow me. You can listen to me and the crew Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Clubhouse. Tracking systems, you know, I see a lot of people that are afraid to use them. You know, you got to dive in because you're only going to get better if you learn the tools that you have and then try to make them better. Everything can be improved in your hospital, you know, and reach out, find different tracking systems, figure out what they're doing, and see if you can use that in your tracking system. Or maybe you want to switch and you can start talking to your manager. It's like, look what this guy can do. And going back to where you were saying, you know, call up your tracking systems to make suggestions. They listen to that and they balance between how difficult it is to do and how many people are screaming for it. So if you want something, call them up, and every time you call them, let them know, repeat. The only way you're going to get it.
That's good. That's a mic drop right there. That's a mic drop. All right. Warren, go ahead, Luane.
No, we were going to ask Hotsie question. Who's your favorite tracking system? No, don't answer that. Answer that.
Luane has jokes today. He has jokes.
Warren, where can we find you? Where can our folks in sterile processing, our viewers, where can they find you at?
They can find me at evolvesterileprocessing.com. That is my consulting company, Evolve Sterile Processing Consulting LLC. I will mention also, you know, on top of what Jake has just said, is each one of these, well, I will say each one of them, the ones that I've worked with the most, have annual updates where you go out to their headquarters or somewhere close to their headquarters, and you get to look at their data, play with their software, talk to other users. Make sure when you bring an instrument tracking system on board that you contract to have individuals go out to their venue and continually learn. Every year you can learn so much being on site with their specialists, as well as when you're working with other users. This is where you start to seed those ideas that you have, and you get people on board with you who then can help present that issue to that company, and you can gain more from it from there.
I love it.
Well
Wayne,
said.
you have anything you want to share before I take us out? We want to honor everyone's time. This has been really good.
Yeah.
Guys, feel free to share this video. Look over this video again, especially if you're looking at securing a tracking system. Dwayne, is there something you wanted to share?
No, just thank you both for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure. It was a great conversation. You know, tracking system is not the most exciting topic that we could be discussing, but you both made it fun.
Well, I learned a lot. And it sounds like a tracking system is a game changer. If you will invest the time on the front end, it can really save you money, have a good return on investment. It can help with educational competencies. Your records are right there. You're not running around looking for things. Everything is right there on site, and so you can learn to pull that. So I really learned a lot from Jake, from Warren, from yourself, Luane. Thanks so much. Hey guys, guess what's coming up? Central Store Week, Store Processing Week is coming up. So hey, show your love. Yeah, we'll eat the pizza, but that's not all we can do. So let's do some different things. Let's really get in there and show our appreciation to Store Processing. Also, just because you are maybe a tech or a lead tech or a supervisor, you also can show appreciation to your upline. I know it's crazy. People don't think about it like that, but no, we're all a team. And so let's really show appreciation. Let's really just show love out there. I know Beyond Clean is doing some things. The Process is doing like a marathon interview day. We have some interviews that'll be coming up here. Also, please go ahead and register for Isham. I know that it's not going to be live, but even some of the things we were talking about today, some of those the new technology out there, some new things. Go ahead, spend some time. I know you're on the computer, but spend some time and look, because there's some things that it really can change the game. You know, it could change the game, and it's exciting to know, and it's exciting to learn. So you want to give some support to Isham, definitely give some support to Beyond Clean, to the Process, to Knowledge or Nonsense, and support one another here for CS Week coming up.
Well, let me throw in one more plug. Can I throw in one more plug?
Yeah, plug away.
All right. So out right now with Isham is the Betty Hanna Scholarship Awards. So, you know, we're looking for applicants for that $2,000. Please apply.
Yes. Hashtag please apply. For those of you who may be in the text, listen, that's money. Go get the money.
Please.
Don't talk about, well, I probably won't get it. You don't know. Apply. A lot of times with scholarships, people don't even apply and that money sits there. Go get that. That's opportunity. That's something that can be invested in you for education. So yeah. Plug. Go ahead. Look like Jake has a plug before we leave. Jake, are you plugging or am I hitting the outro?
I was just going to say, one thing I didn't bring up is that you could also find me on Instagram under Sterile Processing Memes. I forgot about that.
Is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
I think I follow you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. That get the Sterile Processing Memes. We'll put it out there, and I'll also put it on the Knowledge and Nonsense page too. Thank you guys so much.
Post them in your department for Sterile Processing Week. Post them in your department for Sterile Processing Week.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good idea.
Great idea. Great idea.
Good job too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hope to see you back soon. You folks have a good night. Thanks for joining us tonight with Knowledge and Nonsense. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Good night. Thanks again.